So I would now like to begin with Thomas. I will briefly introduce you here. Thomas Legrand holds a PhD in economics, and he's also the author of Politics of Being, Wisdom and Science for a New Developmental Paradigm, among many other publications. He leads the UNEF-convened Conscious Food Systems Alliance, and his chapter in the Great Upshift is titled An Upshifted Developmental Path, the Politics of Being. Thomas will be delighted to hear your keynote, so take it away and take it further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne-Luce. Hello, everyone. Glad to be with you, and very honored to be part of this Upshift movement. My contribution has focused on a book I launched almost 2 years ago called Politics of Being, which is very much, how to take this upshift vision into our societies through harnessing the power of our institutions. How can we organize ourselves collectively for being instead of having? So I've prepared a presentation that I will share. A quick words about my own journey and what leads me to this, to develop this vision. Of course, I guess like all of you or many of you, it started with my own spiritual journey, which initiated in Mexico some 20 years ago with an encounter with native spirituality, and brought me to get exposed to many different traditions. And now I live in France next to Plum Village, the monastery of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh. And indeed, this book was launched January 22nd, 2022, which was the day Thich Nhat Hanh Thai also transitioned. And I've been working with I have a PhD in ecological economics. I worked a lot on forest conservation, climate change, and working as an environmentalist led me really to the conclusion that there is little that we can achieve in these fields if we stay in this general development paradigm focused on economic growth. So this has been, really this insight about we really need a deep systemic change in order to be able to address the many crises we are facing. And so this book has been a 10-year journey, and I was really looking at what is a wisdom-based or spiritual vision of development, really to restart thinking our vision of progress from the very beginning. So this is what I will share with you today, very short synthesis of this idea. So I think we all, if we are here, is that we all share this understanding that we need a cultural evolution. And I believe it is of a spiritual nature, a change of mind and heart, as the Earth Charter was saying already 20 years ago. And I know I'm working at the moment with the United Nations Development Program, and they author every year the Human Development Report, which is probably the most influential document on human development. And in 2020, there was this sentence saying nothing short of a wholesale shift in mindsets is needed to navigate the brave new world of the Anthropocene. So there's, even in these UN organizations, we now see more and more this recognition on the importance of some inner change, a change of mindsets. And why are we here? I mean, I think it's we can understand that we have grown our power on the outside world, or technological power, in the last 2 centuries, let's say, very much. And this has led to a world that is more and more complex. But we have not invested in developing our wisdom to manage that power and to deal with that complexity. So as His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, The fundamental problem is that at every level, we are giving too much attention to the external material aspects of life while neglecting moral ethics and inner values. And by the way, I was very fortunate to meet His Holiness a month and a half ago, and it was a very deep, very transformative experience. So I just want to acknowledge that. So we need also to name what we are going through at the moment. This is an evolutionary crisis. It's a crisis that is calling us to evolve our culture, or worldview, or mindsets. And we are moving based on, we'll have a recording of a keynote by Charles Eisenstein after my presentation. So I think he will explain that probably in details. But basically, I think he named it very well. And pointing at the spiritual nature of these transitions from a story that is, is basically explaining that our cultures are organized around stories, and we are moving from the story of separation that have developed in the last, also we could say almost 2 centuries, where our vision of human nature was that of everyone being selfish and only interested in maximizing our own material self-interest. And as societies, our program was about mastering nature to fulfill our material needs. And that's where this focus on economic development was really embedded in that cultural program. And he says we're moving to the story of interbeing, where we have another vision of human nature, and really we are called to become responsible member of the Earth community. And our vision for society should be one where we recognize that we can only all strive together as one Earth family. So we see these 2 stories competing. One is dying, a story of separation, and one trying to be born. And that's what makes Yuval Noah Harari, the author of *Sapiens*, for example, saying that we are on the threshold of both heaven and hell, depending, which story will be nourished in the coming years and decades. So we all recognizing that our societies needs a new development paradigm. Ban Ki-moon already was recognizing almost 10 years ago that our model is broken and we need to create a new one. So there's many different proposals for that, all pointing in the direction of a more sustainable, qualitative, more human and integral development. And I think beyond that, we can recognize a fundamental orientation, which is moving from having to being. And as I was saying, I tried to search for a wisdom-based approach to development. And I think I found in the Earth Charter this sentence saying, when basic needs have been met, human development is primarily about being more, not having more. So that's coherent also with what sociologists like Engelhardt with managing the World Value Survey, and what you have observed in the last decades. You have seen a cultural evolution from materialism to post-materialism in rich countries, and more fundamentally from survival to self-expression. So that seems coherent with moving from having more towards being more. So the politics of being is this wisdom-based approach and informed by science, which sets being as our main collective goal. And also, we know we can't separate the goal and the means. So being is in itself, the mean that we should harness towards progress. And what I mean by being, first, is not anthropocentric. So I'm talking about all beings, and the rights of nature is very much part of this framework. So all beings have the rights to flourish, all living beings. And for humans, what it means basically we can synthesize that pointing at our truest being, who we are, being able to express who we are, our true nature, and also our highest being, as many philosophers in the past have said that indeed we need to have an organization of society, a culture that fosters the development of virtues or qualities, whether you think about Aristotle or Confucius, that's very obvious. And as we have seen with right now with this story of separation that has come from modernity, we are doing the opposite. We have been doing the opposite, really nourishing the rather lower aspects of our being. So the politics of being aims at aligning our institutions with our true reason to be here on Earth, becoming who we are, the best and most complete version of ourselves. And when we talk about this change of consciousness, often we take a bottom-up approach, focusing on individual transformation and assuming that at some point, these translate in an evolution of the structures of our societies, of our institutions. So my focus is really much, okay, what does that mean in terms of how we organize societies, in terms of our institutions? Institutions should provide favorable conditions for being, which will allow people to flourish and develop their own wisdom, and in turn, being able to adapt and refine these institutions to provide favorable conditions for being. So that's, we need to create this kind of virtuous circle. So, and I'm quoting in particular the work of Elinor Ostrom, who has been the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize in economics. And basically, when she received that prize, she said the main lessons she learned was that people like her have been assuming that people are selfish, the Homo economicus, and they try to organize societies just to kind of neutralize that to bring better social outcomes. But she acknowledged somehow that, by making that assumption, we are activating these lower aspects of our human nature. And she said, what we need, on the contrary, is to develop institutions that bring out the best in humans. So otherwise, we are answering, if we answer the problems with the old narrative of separation, we are reinforcing that narrative and creating deeper problems, basically. What's interesting is that I think there is a very good case if you look at recent scientific development in many disciplines, in particular psychology. I think there is a robust case to talk about, the importance of inner development for sustainability. First, that really what we are seeing in the world is just an expression of this story of separation, where we have disconnected, egocentric individual that feels separated from other humans, that feels separated from nature. And what we do is just to try to accumulate capital and create environmental and social destruction. We feel that is outside of us. And what psychology tells us is that, these people also face more suffering in general. We talk about people driven by extrinsic motivation in the psychological literature, and this is associated with higher level of human suffering. So whole in particular, the economic systems is organized on this disconnected individual that will feed consumption, that will not take into account social and environmental issues in their economic decisions, etc. So, and we know what on the other side of it, some mystics, and we recognize that now that even if they come from many different traditions, they all experience the same kind of ultimate spiritual experience of their true nature, which you can call by different names: unity, oneness, interbeing. So we may not be able to experience that state, but at least it gives us an account of what is our true spiritual nature. And indeed, that's the cultivating this connection to self, others, and natures, what I call, which is very much part of, spiritual development. There is a good part of literature that show that this can indeed make us happier, while of course, having more positive social and environmental outcomes, and at the same time, developing also our wisdom. So that's a simple theory of change why, cultivating our spiritual nature, this connection to self, others, and nature can be a solution to many of the problems we are facing. So I was when I was researching, where are these where are the seeds of this new development paradigm? I found them in what could be called spiritual values, the understanding of our interconnection, systemic and complex thinking. In the science, understanding how life works, and the fact that indeed human societies should learn from that for their own organizations. The new field of study of happiness, of love, empathy, compassion, of peace. All of these different aspects have been in the last decades become subject of science, but are also more and more at the core of many social and political initiatives. I mentioned some of them here. So, for example, we have, a UN resolution on a culture of peace. We have the Charter for Compassion that supports compassionate cities. Happiness is becoming proposed as a new development paradigm with a gross national happiness from Bhutan. We have the Buen Vivir philosophy that is all based on this natural living systems vision, or ecological civilization in China, etc., etc. So mindfulness, of course, we have a wonderful report on the potential of mindfulness in terms of public policies in the UK. So basically the idea, and I found out that there is a long tradition indeed of recognizing progress as putting at the center of society the highest human values, or I call them spiritual values because I think they reflect what an awakened person naturally embody them. And if you look in history, in Western philosophy, truth, goodness, and beauty, the Platonic transcendentals, have been acknowledged as a kind of template for the good societies. And later on, the Christian Church, the Catholic Church, have recognized them as basically properties of God. So that means, they are the closest values to, the absolute dimension that we could call God. In the same way, freedom has been recognized by Hegel as, the most important aspect of the human spirit, and progress is about getting closer to that. So there is a whole philosophical traditions to build on to say that indeed progress is about putting at the center of society's spiritual values. And all these values now, as I've said, there is a science. There are also many social and political change initiatives, and they all have recommendations or indeed existing new systems or public policies in many different sectors. They are all almost new paradigm, and I believe they are all part of this overarching being paradigm. And with this, we can have a policy agenda, very concrete, based on most exclusively existing examples that are already working in many different countries. And if we bring them together, we have indeed a very concrete, actionable policy agenda in many different fields. In my book, I cover 9 sectors that are mentioned here. So, and what is interesting is that as I did this research, I realized that often, the specialists of these different sectors in education, in food, agriculture, etc., they are often coming to the same conclusion that indeed the way to go in these many different sectors, the way to resolve the crises we are facing in many of these sectors is about the proposal that I'm presenting here. So to me, the why is that we have been so much looking, prioritizing the material outside aspects of our social lives, that because we have neglected so much these inner values, now all or many of the solutions are to be found in that new vision. Yeah, just to give a few, education, positive education, can we support young people to develop their life skills, their characters, their values, the importance of mental health. There is even economic studies that show investing in mental health may have even positive economic returns for societies. Of course, the importance of family, as this is where human flourishing, the basis of it is, we could say, very much defined in the 5 first years of life, with when children develop secured attachment. So, parenting programs, parental leave policies, etc., etc. Yeah, I may not go in much details, but just to say that we do indeed have very concrete policy recommendations based on existing examples and easily replicable. So, in conclusions, to recognize that healthy human being does naturally good for society, for their environment. So why is it not the case? I think it points out very clearly to the importance of healing traumas as a gateway to being. Wisdom and science as the pillars of the politics of being. This is very important. And indeed, I think this separation in especially in Western societies is very much related to this kind of trauma we have with religion, maybe a bit less in the US, but more in Europe. And the importance of being able to create this dialogue between wisdom and science. And that's how I do with my reflection. Wisdom being able to give us this vision of development is more about being, and what does that mean, etc. But then asking science, okay, how we can cultivate. Basically, there's a science for all these human values that can tell us how to cultivate them, both at the individual level but also at the collective level. So, a strong rationale, understandable by decision makers and average citizens. I wanted to provide a simple but integrative conceptual framework. And some people have mentioned it's kind of trying to define a field of research and action. So I invite you to this website, www.politicsofbeing.com, and hopefully looking forward to collaborate with all of you. Thank you very much. And just to say that, this reflection, you can see the endorsements on the website. I think it has, I've mentioned wisdom and science, and there's great recognition from spiritual leaders and political leaders. We have 2 of them here, Mathieu Ricard and Federico Mayor. We used to head the UNESCO, but also of, yes, academic and also of academic leaders. So thank you very much for listening, and glad to stay with you.
Thank you so much, Thomas, for actually reminding us for all the progress that has already been made, but also for providing these beautiful foundations for the maturation of our species, and bringing it back to the intrinsic values that unite us all. So I think that's really, really beautiful. And